Hello, Thrivers. How are you guys doing out there? So today we're here with Damien Scott. He's a QuickBooks Pro advisor. Zero advisor. He's a dedicated accountant with over 15 years of experience, aiding small companies and owners with their accounting, bookkeeping, and tax needs. Damien is the director of accounting at Better Books Bookkeeping Services. It's a full-service accounting firm and a tax practice located in New York. Damien's passion drives his staff to aid small businesses who are our constituents and owners to succeed in their endeavors and ability. And his ability, he has this incredible ability to explain complex material to small business owners that allows them to make better decisions based on their books. Damien can help your business gain a better understanding of your financial position. So you can contact Damien today to find out, after you see him in this interview, to find out what it is, and he's going to tell you at the end how to get a hold of him. So Damien, thank you for coming on and talking to our Thrivers today. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me, Joe. I'm awesome. Glad to be here.
Good. As you can see, Damien's getting himself prepared. Damien's been climbing some mountains lately, and so tell us a little bit about that so that people know that what you're up to in the world. You're climbing mountains, man. That's cool.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, I had this unique opportunity to assist with people suffering from lupus. And one of the ways I thought I could do that is taking my love of the outdoors and driving awareness and raising some fun lupus by climbing mountains. So I'm in training right now to climb the 7 summits, which are the highest peaks on each of the continents.
Very cool.
It was next January, but yeah, pretty exciting stuff.
Excellent. Well, thank you for taking time out today to talk to us and talk to the Thrivers out on Facebook and LinkedIn and wherever this is going to get viewed, YouTube, all over the place, right?
So glad to be here, Joe.
Good. So there's 2 questions that I have for you, right? As you know, we're all about helping entrepreneurs thrive and business growth. We just had our book come out, How Entrepreneurs Thrive, and it's really a focus on what are the things you need to do to grow your business. The financial piece is a big, important piece. So before we talk about what I want you to talk about for folks, I want them to know, because you're an entrepreneur just like the rest of us.
Right.
And I want to hear about your journey. What did it take? How has it been for you? So tell us about your journey.
Yeah, so Joe, it's interesting. My journey began many years ago. I was actually a teenager when I began understanding what accounting was. I was raised in a foster care system. My foster parents brought me to they owned a couple of small businesses. And each summer I would go in with my foster mother and she would show me how to file and fax. And then I ended up using QuickBooks, 3.5 by 5 floppy disks, helping her post transactions and create invoices. So my journey went somewhere else. I ended up in the Marine Corps, got out of the Marine Corps, wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was a great machine gunner, but that doesn't correspond to the real world.
Thank you for your service. I appreciate that.
Thanks. But I had this drive to want to be my own boss. I had the drill instructors in my unit, people yelling at you, telling you what to do all the time. And I knew I didn't want to be that person. So it was time for me to go off on my own. I went to school, but all the while I was doing people's books. Always wanted to work for myself and make my own plan, and make my own future. It wasn't riddled with the problems that we all face, right? Low capital involvement, not having enough funds, or having too many clients, and having issues with that as well. So growth was a big thing. I did take my original practice to over 350 monthly write-up clients, staff of 12. We did about 5,000 tax returns a year out in San Diego, California, where I had my practice. And then I moved out to the East Coast. And again, I wasn't sure, the East Coast was very different from the West Coast. So I ended up getting a job, a job, working for somebody else. I'm a horrible employee. I wasn't the guy that was going to take direction.
Yeah.
Kind of guy. I'm not a yes man.
Yeah.
I always wanted to question things. I always wanted to do better and help small businesses. And that's really where I found my passion. Now with my business, we've just really closed our first full year of me being 100% in the business. And I really find my passion helping entrepreneurs on their journey. And the way that I do that is just by helping them understand their financials, because that's a big hurdle for small business owners and entrepreneurs out there. You know, they're great at what they do. If they're a plumber, they can plumb all day long. But you put them behind a desk and they have to send invoices or understand cash flow or understand receivables and payables. It's just not their forte. It's not their game. But if they have somebody, you know, a sound advisor with them, assisting them along the way, they can make better business decisions. Hence, Better Books NYC.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be their game. They should really be able to focus on what it is that they're up to. So the service that you provide really frees them up to be able to be their best at what they do.
Exactly.
Good, good, good. So now that we know your journey and we know your story, you know, my next question is going to be, right? So this month has been all about annual planning and what it is that we are, that's happening and we're creating next for our businesses. And we're talking to all our entrepreneurs about that and all the people that are our constituents about that and all the people on Facebook and anybody who will hear us, because we're really committed to creating a world where all entrepreneurs can thrive. Everyone. Right? So to create that, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs about their annual planning from your particular lens, from your view of the world? What advice would you give them? What do they need to be doing now in January to prepare and have the best year they've ever had?
Absolutely. So, and that's a great question. And Joe, one of the things that I've always heard, and I don't know who said this, but if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So what you're doing in helping entrepreneurs understand the planning process and what they need to do to plan for their future is extremely important. So this is great. And I'll have to tell you, I mean, we really start this kind of back in October of the previous year is when we really start looking at planning for the next year, right? So from my perspective, from an accounting perspective, a financial perspective, we kind of start this process in October for the next year. We take a look at what you've been doing this, you know, the current year. And then we talk about what are your goals for next year? Do you want to increase your revenue? Do you want to decrease your expenses? Do you have staffing issues? Do you have staffing problems? Do you need more staff? Do you need less staff? How are you prioritizing? So these are the kinds of things that we start taking a look at in October, refining through that last quarter of the year, so that in January you have this goal and budget and plan laid out for the next year. If you're in January already and we're talking about planning for this year, right? I mean, you need to get on the ball. You've got 11 months to make your goals happen, to make your dreams, to be successful. Half of it, maybe more than half of it, is mindset, right? You got to have the right mindset. I want to increase my revenue by 30%. All right, what's it going to take to make that happen? And you need to really sit down and analyze that from a financial perspective. Do you have enough capital to make that happen? Do you need additional capital? Do you need additional staffing assistance? Can you reach to outside contractors that can assist you in these sorts of things? So it's time to really sit down, buckle down, think about what you want, where you want to be at 12/31/2019, and work your way backwards. And from a financial perspective, that takes budgeting, and that takes looking at that budget on a weekly and monthly basis, right? If you don't understand that process, you need to sit down with your financial advisor, your accountant, even your bookkeeper. If you've got a sharp bookkeeper on your staff, sit down with them each and every month. Make that a plan to really sit down and understand your financials.
Good. And should they be looking weekly?
You know, in some cases, yes. I mean, in some businesses, in some instances, yes. You know, it doesn't have to be an all-day affair.
Yeah, I know. Listen, we look every day for a few minutes. Every day we look. It's not even weekly for us, so I know what you're talking about.
I mean, most entrepreneurs, when they wake up in the morning, the first thing they check is, did I get any deposits? Where's my cash flow? So cash flow is a big thing in any small business, especially when you're starting out. If you're under that $250,000 a year mark, you're really drilling down on your cash flow every day, even if you don't understand it. You're looking at your bank account, but you need to understand, what's out there. Are your receivables too high? Are your payables too high? Why is that? And you need to understand these things, right? It's one thing to say, okay, my payables are at 100,000, but why are they at 100,000? 30, 60, or 90 days out? Where are you on that? Same thing with your receivables. Understanding your financials is a lot different than just knowing what a number is.
Good. And then I have as you were talking, a question popped up in my mind. So we've been dealing with a lot of vendors lately that are minority certified, women owned, and all those things. And they end up doing business with the government, or they end up doing business with big organizations that have these long pay cycles, 120-day pay cycles, right? So their cash flow is always tapped. So I wanted to, one, get your opinion on factoring, because this is something that keeps coming up for a lot of our entrepreneurs, and a lot of people are not going to know what factoring is. So if you could talk a little bit about it and explain what it is, that'd be great. And then see if you have an opinion. I want to hear your opinion about it.
Sure, absolutely. That's actually a great question, Joe. I actually work with two fairly decent sized contractors that are MBE certified, Minority Business Enterprise certified. They work with fairly large government contracts, and they do factor their receivables. So factoring is a pretty simple process, right? But an expensive one. So it's something to keep in mind. So what ends up happening when you factor something? Let's say that you send your invoices and you're pre-funded for those invoices up to a certain amount. I'll use my client, for example. He factors his receivables. When it's time to invoice his vendors, he sends an invoice to his customers, but he also sends an invoice to his factoring company, which will forward him 80% of that invoice within 24 hours. So he's getting that money up front, which does increase your cash flow, right? But you have to take into consideration, how much is that factoring costing you? And is that 80% going to match? So if you're a contractor, obviously you have job, labor, and materials. And for a lot of these government type contracts, you're using union labor, very expensive. You're also, your materials are very expensive out there right now. So is that 80% going to cover, what your expenses are, your direct expenses are, but is it also going to cover your overhead expense, right? So factoring can be a great thing as far as increasing cash flow.
So just a quick question. So is the cost 20% then?
No. Good point, Joe. So the cost is not 20%. They forward you that 80%. They advance you basically that 80% of that invoice. And then once that customer ends up paying the factoring company, so they won't send, the contractor a check. They'll send the factoring company a check. Once they receive that check, they'll pay you the remaining balance minus their fees.
Which usually looks like what? What is in average?
Typical advance fees are anywhere between 1.5 to 3.
Okay, so it costs you 1.5 to 3 to have that, right? So
the benefit of that advance of 80%.
So the advance of 8% costs you 3 points. Could cost you up to 3 points.
It could.
So it's 3%, right? Cool. So I got that. But for somebody who's running on a low, they need cash now, factoring is a good solution to be able to deal with that. Okay, good.
Sure, absolutely. I think factoring can be a great thing. I always consider it an interim deal. Yeah. I don't recommend you sustain factoring for the life cycle of a business.
Yeah.
It's something that I feel you should do as an interim basis until you can build some capital, get some capital, and then remove yourself from the factoring process.
Perfect. Good. Any last tips that you want to give people about planning this year now, because we're kind of late into it. You said you started in October, but we're late into it. So what are some of the things that they could do now? Some quick tips.
Yeah, some quick tips would be right now, sit down, look at your financials, and think of what your plan is for the end of the year. Get your mind right, get your mindset right. We're entrepreneurs. They have this wonderful ability to take problems and just turn them inside out. You're laughing at me, Joe. You and I have been there. I know we have.
All the time, my friend.
Right? So, I mean, look, we have lives as well, right? So I think it's important that you balance that. You make sure that what you're striving for balances with what your family aspect is. But take the time to do it, and take some time for yourself as well. Sometimes we get really bogged down. Sometimes we're so focused on what we want to achieve. Sometimes we block out that other world, and that's our family. We need to make sure that they're a part of this, that they're on board with our plan, because the biggest support that you can have is the support of your family and friends. So make sure that they're taken care of as well within these plans that you're creating for yourself.
Awesome. So with that said, I really want to thank you and honor you. Remember, you are loved, my friend. So I thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm sure all our thrivers appreciate you and appreciate the great advice that you've given us today. I really look forward to hearing from you again. We'll probably call you at the end of Q1 so you can give us some tips for what the next quarter should look like.
That'd be great, Joe. It was great talking with you. Good luck to all you entrepreneurs out there.
Thank you. So the one last quick piece is, how do they get a hold of you now that they know all this wonderful stuff if they want to work with you?
Thanks, Joe. So Better Books NYC, we can be reached at 347-560-9376. You can reach me directly at extension 201. You can also email me at dscott@betterbooksnyc.com, or check out our website, betterbooksnyc.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. I'll talk to you soon, my friend.